The napkin drop. Detective Mike Thompson adjusted his position in the unmarked sedan, eyes locked on the figure emerging from the hockey arena. After 30 years, this moment felt surreal. The suspect walked casually toward the concession area, completely unaware that investigators had been building a case around his DNA for months. He ordered a hot dog, wiped his hands on a paper napkin, and tossed it into the public trash can. That single, thoughtless gesture would finally connect him to a brutal murder from 1993. Thompson waited until the suspect disappeared into the crowd before signaling his partner. The napkin was carefully retrieved, bagged, and sent directly to the lab. This wasn't just any piece of trash. It was the key to solving one of Indianapolis's most haunting cold cases, the 1993 crime scene. February 15, 1993. 21-year-old Jeanne Ann Childs was found dead in her Indianapolis apartment by her roommate. The scene told a story of unimaginable violence. Childs had been stabbed multiple times in her chest and neck. The killer had used such force that the blade penetrated completely through her body in several wounds. What puzzled investigators was the lack of forced entry. The apartment showed no signs of struggle outside the immediate area where Childs was attacked. Her purse remained untouched, ruling out robbery. The killer had either been let inside or had access to the apartment. The crime scene yielded crucial evidence. Blood samples that didn't belong to the victim were recovered from the scene. Investigators also found partial fingerprints and what appeared to be saliva on a drinking glass. In 1993, DNA analysis was still in its infancy, but the samples were carefully preserved. When the DNA profile was finally extracted and entered into the CODIS database, it came back with no matches. The killer's genetic signature existed, but his identity remained a mystery. Detectives interviewed dozens of people connected to Childs. They examined her work relationships, dating history, and social connections. Every lead eventually went cold. The case haunted the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Childs was a nursing student with no known enemies. She worked part-time at a local restaurant and was described by everyone as kind and trusting. The randomness of her murder made it even more disturbing. As years passed, the case file grew thicker with dead-end reports and false leads. The DNA evidence sat waiting in the lab, a genetic fingerprint with no name attached. Technology improved, but the killer remained invisible in every database search. By 2010, the case had been officially classified as cold. The original detectives had retired or moved on to other assignments. Child's family continued to call the department regularly, hoping for news that never came. The killer had successfully evaded justice for nearly 2 decades, but genetic science was about to change everything. The same DNA that had been useless in 1993 would become the most powerful tool investigators had ever possessed. The killer's anonymity was about to end, destroyed by advances in forensic genealogy that he never could have imagined. The genetic genealogy breakthrough. In 2018, forensic genealogy changed cold case investigations forever. The technique that captured the Golden State Killer suddenly made every unsolved case with DNA evidence a potential breakthrough waiting to happen. Detective Sarah Martinez inherited the Child's case when the cold case unit decided to revisit their most promising DNA evidence. The genetic profile that had been useless for 25 years was about to become their strongest lead. Forensic genealogy works differently than traditional DNA databases. Instead of looking for exact matches in CODIS, investigators upload crime scene DNA to public genealogy websites where millions of people have voluntarily shared their genetic information. The system searches for partial matches that indicate family relationships. Martinez partnered with genetic genealogist Dr. Rebecca Hayes to build a family tree from the killer's DNA. They uploaded the profile to GEDmatch, a database where users share DNA results from companies like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA. Within hours, they had dozens of potential relatives ranging from third cousins to distant connections. The process required meticulous detective work. Hayes constructed family trees going back generations, following bloodlines and marriage records. She identified common ancestors shared by multiple DNA matches, slowly narrowing the geographic and genetic possibilities. After 3 months of genealogical investigation, they had identified 4 potential suspects. All were men of the right age who lived in Indianapolis during 1993. The family trees pointed to descendants of 2 brothers who had immigrated from Ireland in the 1920s. The strongest candidate was Thomas Mitchell, a 52-year-old maintenance worker who lived just 6 miles from where Childs was murdered. Mitchell had worked at the same hospital where Childs did her nursing clinicals. Court records showed he had been questioned briefly in 1993, but never considered a serious suspect. Hayes verified the genealogical connections through public records and obituaries. Mitchell's great-grandfather was the brother of another DNA match's great-grandfather. The genetic distance matched perfectly with what they expected from the crime scene profile. But genealogy alone wasn't enough for an arrest. They needed a contemporary DNA sample that could be directly compared to the evidence from 1993. Getting that sample required careful legal strategy and patient surveillance. Indiana law allows police to collect abandoned DNA without a warrant. Anything discarded in public becomes fair game for evidence collection. Martinez began planning an operation to obtain Mitchell's DNA through items he threw away. The surveillance team learned Mitchell's routine over several weeks. He worked the night shift at a downtown office building and often stopped for food on his way home. Every Tuesday, he attended hockey games at the local arena with his adult son. The hockey games presented the perfect opportunity. The arena was public property with multiple trash cans and heavy foot traffic. Mitchell always bought concessions and disposed of cups, napkins, and food containers. The surveillance team could collect his discarded items without drawing attention. The stakeout and evidence collection. Detective Thompson positioned himself near the concession stand 30 minutes before game time. Mitchell arrived with his son exactly as expected, wearing his usual Indianapolis Colts jacket and baseball cap. He seemed completely relaxed, laughing with his son about something on his phone. The surveillance team had practiced this operation multiple times. Detective Rodriguez monitored the exits while Thompson maintained visual contact with the target. A crime scene technician waited in an unmarked van outside, ready to process any evidence immediately. Mitchell ordered his usual hot dog and beer. He used several napkins to clean mustard from his hands, then crumpled them together with the hot dog wrapper. Thompson watched him walk directly to the nearest trash can and drop the bundle inside. The timing had to be perfect. Too soon, and other patrons might contaminate the evidence. Too late, and custodial staff might empty the bin. Thompson waited exactly 3 minutes before casually approaching the trash can. He retrieved the napkins using sterile gloves and tweezers, placing them directly into evidence bags. Each item was photographed in place before collection. The chain of custody documentation began immediately, with Thompson signing and dating every evidence label. The napkins went straight to the Indiana State Police lab for expedited DNA analysis. The lab extracted multiple genetic profiles from the mustard-stained paper. Mitchell's saliva and skin cells provided a complete DNA profile within 48 hours. The comparison was definitive. Mitchell's DNA matched the crime scene evidence with a statistical probability of 1 in 7.2 billion. Every genetic marker aligned perfectly with the blood samples recovered from Childs' apartment 30 years earlier. On March 15, 2023, exactly 30 years and 1 month after Jeanne Ann Childs was murdered, Thomas Mitchell was arrested at his workplace. He showed no emotion when detectives read the charges. He had spent 3 decades believing he had gotten away with murder. The arrest warrant detailed the genetic evidence linking Mitchell to the crime scene. His DNA was found on the drinking glass and in blood drops near Childs' body. The forensic genealogy investigation had identified him through his family connections, and the napkin had provided the final proof. Mitchell was charged with first-degree murder. The DNA evidence was so overwhelming that his defense attorney immediately began discussing plea negotiations. After 30 years of freedom, Mitchell faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice after 3 decades. Thomas Mitchell's arrest brought closure to a case that had haunted Indianapolis for an entire generation. Jeanne Ann Childs' family finally had answers about who killed their daughter and why she died. The conviction demonstrated how forensic genealogy has revolutionized cold case investigations. DNA evidence that was useless in 1993 became the key to solving the murder in 2023. A simple paper napkin discarded at a hockey game ended 3 decades of impunity. Mitchell pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life without parole. Justice delayed, but not denied. Justice after 3 decades. Thomas Mitchell's arrest brought closure to a case that had haunted Indianapolis for an entire generation. Jeanne Ann Childs' family finally had answers about who killed their daughter and why she died. The conviction demonstrated how forensic genealogy has revolutionized cold case investigations. DNA evidence that was useless in 1993 became the key to solving the murder in 2023. A simple paper napkin discarded at a hockey game ended 3 decades of impunity. Mitchell pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life without parole. Justice delayed but not denied.